tentemos dirigir as nossas intervenções para a forma como os sindicatos podem intervir mais adequadamente para tratar dos temas específicos dos trabalhadores migrantes, por um lado, adequando as suas estratégias à especificidade das expectativas desses trabalhadores migrantes e, por essa via também, conseguir atrair mais trabalhadores migrantes para o seu seio. A performance que vimos antes deste debate iniciar, precisamente, tentou-nos evitar um pouco para essa necessidade de ver como é que vamos tratar dos assuntos, como é que chegamos às trabalhadoras domésticas, aos trabalhadores que têm receio de contactar o sindicato e, portanto, temos que ver, do ponto de vista da nossa estratégia enquanto sindicatos para a contratação coletiva, como chegar a este grupo cada vez maior, este segmento cada vez maior no mercado laboral.
So as trade union, it's clear that we fight for all workers. All workers have rights, regardless of their migration status, and we can never allow them to be exploited by employers. Workers have to be recognized and paid according to collective agreement, and by it means also that by defending undocumented migrants, for example, we defend collective bargaining and we defend collective organization and the interest of all workers. Migrants are among the underrepresented groups in the trade unions, this is clear. So even if we can estimate that 10% of our members are migrants, this is still clear that they are underrepresented. One of the reasons can be that a majority of migrants are active in the precarious sectors, so sectors where historically trade unions are weaker. It is even worse when we speak about sectors where women migrants are overrepresented, but this is not an excuse for trade union. Those sectors are vital, and the crisis of COVID-19 has shown us how essential these workers are. The crisis showed us also how they lack social protection, how bad is the respect of their rights, and this is something we have to take seriously. Unfortunately, having a migrant background is still a source of discrimination at work. It creates a further segmentation of the EU labour market, but collective bargaining and social dialogue can actually reduce the risk of downgrading working conditions of migrants. When we look at the country-based analysis and recommendation within the economic governance at the EU, they have pointed out underperformance of people with a migrant background in local labour market. But such gaps have to be removed, and local workers should stand together with migrant workers and secure collective agreements with employers that guarantee fair and equal treatment for all. The fight against discrimination and segmentation in the labour market is important. Often migrant workers are in the most discriminating form of employment. This reflects a structural discrimination, but also racism that is present in the labour market. Discrimination in the labour market is detrimental to all workers whose working conditions risk being eroded by bad employers, by inefficient labour market institutions, declining of collective bargaining, or by laws that allows it. Evidence shows that third country nationals suffer discrimination on the basis of nationality. In this context, the European labour market looks like a three-layer cake. The local workers on top, the EU migrants in the middle, and the bottom layer occupied by third country nationals. Gaps are visible in employment rates, in employment conditions, and access to social protection. At the same time, the European labour market records shortages that are slowing down our economies and our society in many EU countries. In particular, this is true in countries with strong demographic decline and rapid aging of the population, and in countries with inefficient migration policies. Often, in this context, migrants are also afraid of the consequence of collective action, of becoming members of trade unions. The pressure of employers that was mentioned before by our comrades explains exactly also this fear. Migrants are also younger than the population, so this has also to be taken into account. The average age of migrants in the EU is 28, when the average age of the population is 41. And we know that trade unions have difficulty when it comes to integrating not only migrants, but also younger generations. So this is a double issue that we have to tackle, because they are the future of the labor market, and they are then also the future of the trade unions. So as well as migrant involvement in trade unions, youth involvement is a challenge that we have to address, and by addressing the two dimensions, and I would also, of course, put a third one, that is the woman involvement in trade union. I think by tackling these three dimensions, we can also improve our representativity. But if we fight for migrant workers, this is not only to fight against social dumping, even if it's clear that ensuring good rights for migrants preserve the rights of all workers, but we can't just fight for wage for all, thinking that this will be enough to ensure good conditions for migrants. We also need a dedicated work to involve migrants in union, taking into account their specific problems in our collective bargaining agenda. I will give 4 examples that can, and some were already mentioned. There's a need to take into account the language barrier. The bargaining agenda can be used to take up language issue with the employer, as well as providing for the language need of migrant workers. It also brings an issue of staff development or service provision. So key issues that could be raised under the bargaining agenda include health and safety guidance in other language, for example, with information and advice. Welcome pack with details about key local service, produced in a range of relevant language. Also paid time off and courses cost for language course. So this is concrete examples that can help breaking the language barrier. Second, I would say that there are also other barriers, and they were already mentioned. The discrimination that migrants face at work, and I would say also the racism that is faced at work, is important to combat. Combat racism and should include, so this is, we can bring also in collective bargaining this dimension, with the need for migrant workers to be entitled to protection from racism, but also to have access to anti-racist trainings and events. We can also look at how we can concretely fight discrimination and racism in recruitment procedures, at work, but also in promotion, when you want to get access to promotion. A third aspect is the question of access to education and training course. So migrant workers should be provided with support to attend a large range of courses. Here we have to recognize that more often, of course, migrants need recognition of skills gained in informal education. And this means that because they are not recognized fully in their competences, they work overqualified or underpaid. This is two reverse sides of the same medal. Often the local population went through education and got a proper degree, and the degree is recognized in collective bargaining, but this is not the case for migrant for migrant workers. So this is also something that we can bring in collective bargaining to address the specific problem that they have. But a last example also in the collective bargaining agenda that we can bring is the question of leave arrangement. If you take into account the situation of migrant worker coming from Syria, for example, their home country can be thousands of miles away, and they still have the same access they will have the same access to leave as local workers. So it's not taking into account that, for example, if they have to go to a family funeral, this is impossible, because with 1 day or with 2 days of leave, in these cases, they will never be able to go back to their country to do this. So this is things where I don't have the solutions to give you, but these are things that concretely in the collective bargaining agenda we can bring to really take into account